I welcome you on board. So a little brief introduction about you. Sarah is a primary elementary school teacher at Whitlow Primary School. Sarah is a linguistic and educator who is best known for her work on the Jolly Grammar program, which is a phonics and grammar teaching method for children. Sarah developed the Jolly Grammar program in collaboration with co-author Sue Lloyd. The Jolly Grammar program is a part of the wider Jolly Phonics program, which teaches children how to read and write using a phonetic approach. The program uses a range of multisensory techniques to include and engage the learners. This includes songs, actions, stories. Jolly Grammar in particular focuses on teaching grammar concepts such as part of speech, sentence structure, and punctuation. The content covered in this session is for grade 1 and 2. It's about the grammar progression in grade 1 and 2. Thank you. Over to you, Sarah.
Hello, nice to be here again. This is the second part to the one we did a few weeks ago. I hope you were all there to hear that, because the two sides of the scheme do run together and support each other. And actually, they're not really two sides. It's all part of the same program. Once we've got the phonics handbook in the first year and learning the sounds and everything going, and the children were actually reading quite well, not too many problems. But Sue and I kept saying, but they haven't finished yet. They've only done their reception their first year. We need a bit more. We need certainly more spelling, because while reading, you've got a clue in front of you on the page. When you're writing, you've got a blank piece of paper. How do they know which alternative to choose? How are we going to teach that? And Chris said, yeah, I think you need to teach grammar. And we were like, really? They're a bit young. Don't know why they need to necessarily know grammar now. But we said, well, I think you should do grammar as well as spelling. So we thought, okay. I have to admit, I hadn't done a lot of grammar at school. It wasn't in favour when I was at school, and also because we're English, we speak English. Why do we need to know the grammar of it? Because we're going to write what we speak. It's not an issue or a problem. We did some very basic grammar. So we sort of had to learn the higher grammar as we went. I have to say, I wish I'd been taught it when I was at school, and I'd been taught it properly, because grammar is obviously the rules of the language and lets you know what is right. Also, again, when you have the vocabulary that you share with the children, rather than just telling them something is wrong, you can explain, why it's wrong, or they can apply their knowledge to know the things that are right. Where I live, right on the east coast of the UK, the local accent or dialect, all past tenses are regular. So they will have drived and they swimmed, and they will hear their parents and their grandparents saying these words, which technically are not correct in terms of received pronunciation, but you can't say to a child that's wrong, because they're hearing it around them, all the time. So, we explain that it's a dialect, or that that's what people locally say, but that, actually for a past tense, you add the ed or you have an irregular past tense, and this is what it is. So as I say, it gives you a language to discuss language with the children that you are teaching. And we found the kids loved it when we started, and the parents were horrified, and the parents didn't know what some of the things we were teaching are, and were coming in and asking, what's a noun? They came home and told me all about it, but I don't know what it is. We weren't taught it. So grammar has been a steep learning process, but one I found absolutely fascinating, and I really enjoy now. So, without further ado, shall I start my little presentation? And as I say, today we are talking about just the first 2 years of grammar. So it follows on from the Jolly Phonics from the first year, where they've learned the basic sounds, they've learned to blend, to read words, they've learned to segment, to spell words, they've learned some tricky words, and they've started their writing and everything. So we are now taking them on from that basic level. So we go over a lot of the spellings and things, but it is for spelling, not for reading. So as I say, the two sides work together. As I say, the strapline, handbooks for teaching grammar, spelling and punctuation, because we see it as a whole. We don't see it as two strands that never meet, okay, because they're not. They all come together to allow the children to be masters of the language for speaking, for reading, and for writing, because we want all those three elements, not just one or two of them. Okay, so that's why there's a lot of overlap, why there's revision of spelling and grammar on both sheets. The scheme is progressive. So for things like dictation sentences, there will be the grammar points we've been teaching, as well as the spelling points we've been teaching. So everything should come together to reinforce itself. Melly, yesterday, a friend of mine from Bulgaria described it as cyclical. It's a cycle that keeps on reinforcing and revising things with the children, so they really know and understand what we are teaching them. So the handbooks, we also have pupil books. Again, just as we said last time, the handbooks and the pupil books have the same information, the same content in it. It's just presented in a slightly different way. Okay, so in the handbooks, the teacher's notes side would be in the teacher book, in the teacher and pupil book. And in the handbooks, the children's side, the children's sheet is photocopyable. Whereas obviously in the pupil books, they've got some colour on them and you have to buy a pupil book for each child. So it tells you what to do. Okay, this little notebook at the top tells you what you need. Do you need scissors? Do you need coloured pencils? Okay, at the bottom, it will also tell you where that grammar point or the point of that lesson has been covered before. So you can check back if you don't know, or you want to know what the children have already been taught, or if you're introducing it and you're having to revise or teach concepts, then again, that's a good place to start, because that will tell you what you need to know. Again, we have an introduction, which just revises what the children are supposed to know. If they don't know it, you teach it. The main point, which is what the lesson is about that day. And again, there's information there for the teacher, enough to get started and teach what you need to. How to do the sheet. And then there's always an extension activity for those children who finish before the end of the lesson, but something that is connected to the lesson and has got a point to it. And to say then the children's pages are photocopiable for there to fill in. And as I say, we are multi-sensory, so we try and make it fun. You know, when you say to people about grammar, they tend to think of, you know, being tied to a desk with a big stick and being drilled in, this is a noun or this is a verb, or how do you conjugate this word, this verb and things. But we try and make it fun for the children and build up a little bit at a time the knowledge that they have in order to make sure they really understand the concepts that we're teaching them. And just like with the sounds, let's say the basic tenet of Jolly Phonics is that we start very simply. Okay, we start very simply and we build up. So in Grammar 1, we begin by going over the capital letters and talk about them in terms of sentences, because obviously the children should know the capital letters because they should have been taught in the first year, but we go over the formation just to make sure. And we also go over to make sure they understand that although they have the name A, it still has the sound A, just like the lowercase letter, because it's amazing. You come across children and adults sometimes. So a word like apple, okay, they're not going to get the right word if they go A-ple, okay, because they see a capital letter there. Sometimes they say the letter name. So we say make sure that they know the sound that goes with each capital letter as well as the name of it. And obviously, the place they see capital letters most frequently is at the beginning of sentences. So we spend a little bit of time talking about sentences with them. And we have a very simple definition of a sentence. Again, we're talking about very young children. If you go and talk to grammarians at university level, they'll tell you there's all sorts of layers on top. But as I say, we are dealing with young children. And we explain that sentences start with a capital letter. They end with a full stop and they make sense. Okay, very, very slimmed down version of a definition to start with, but it's one the children understand. Obviously, that's a definition for writing, but actually children need to be able to speak the sentence before they can write it. So even with the children in my class, you know, they'll come in to tell me their news on a Monday morning, and it will be, I went to the park and I went to grandma's and we had a cup of tea and then we went out and I walked the dog, and it's just one long string, and they're either using and to join everything or spaces, okay, which is sort of the punctuation of speech. But we start off trying to get them to think of one letter and saying, normally when you get to the and, that's it. So I went to the park and we put our finger on our lip. So they begin to get that physical feeling of what a sentence is. Sometimes, particularly if it's not the children's native mother tongue, actually you have the opposite problem in that you have to encourage them to speak and say the sentence rather than stop them. You know, if I stop them, I'll always go on and ask them the other things, and we'll say, you know, I went to the park, we went to the supermarket, okay, and that is the full stop, and they begin to get that feeling of it. And again, if you're encouraging them to make a longer sentence, again, you can still do the actions. There's something called Kung Fu punctuation, which is very good if you look it up. But even just this putting the finger just to show it's a full stop. So we get them speaking in sentences, which then actually helps them to write in sentences, and where the full stop comes. And if they've got a full stop, the next word is going to start with a capital letter. So it's pointing these things out sometimes, which are obvious to us because we do it all the time, but not necessarily obvious to the children who are just starting out. So as I say, we start off nice and easily, and we have our scrambled sentences. So again, they cut words out. There's some to photocopy and use in the handbook. And what they have to do is they then have to put those words, unscramble them to make the sentence. And again, it's a physical activity which also develops their fine motor skills. If they get it wrong, then that's fine, because you can just talk about it with them and move the cards round, because you know, then it's not crossed out in their book. When they've got it right, then they can draw the picture, write the sentence underneath. And again, they're getting this idea of what a sentence is. I have a washing line that I have big cards, and we peg them on the washing line. And then again, you can talk about it with the children. They can talk about it. And you can have a stack of cards with the words you're working on. You know, I can see a bee, I can see a chair, I can see a table. Whatever it is that vocabulary you're learning, you can use that on your washing line to help the children. As I say, it doesn't matter if they get it wrong, because you talk about it and you correct it and you make it right. So it works really, really well. They know the word that comes first because it's usually got a capital. They know the word that comes at the end because it's got a full stop. And then they arrange the other words in the middle, as I say, to make a sentence that makes sense. So the other place you will see a capital letter, or they will often see a capital letter, is, of course, on their names. I know they all know how to write their name. Some of them write it all in capital letters, but names should have a capital letter at the beginning. Now, names are what we call nouns, and your name, my name, are proper nouns because they refer to a particular person or a particular place or a particular thing that there is only the one of. Days of the week are proper nouns in English. That's why they have a capital letter. The same with months of the year. Countries, towns, cities. Okay, so we talk about the fact that these are proper nouns, they're name words, which is obvious because we've started with their name and that they need a proper noun. Now, we are multisensory, as has been said, so we have an action and a colour for each part of speech. Now, actually, the colour for nouns is black, so it doesn't particularly show up on the first one. The action is that we put 2 fingers on our forehead, which is actually the British Sign Language for sign for name. So then they know that if they have to do that action, when I call a word out, then it will need a capital letter. And as we go through and we learn more parts of speech, I will call words out and they all have to do the action. So I'll say whatever it is, London. So they go like this. And I say, if it's a proper noun, what does it need? It needs a capital letter. So again, you're reinforcing and helping them learn what's going to come in their writing, but you're doing it verbally. So it's quite good fun because obviously you want to stretch and broaden what you're teaching them, not just have it as this very narrow, this is a noun, this is what we're doing, it is a name word. So we do work with addresses. Obviously, it's very good for a child to know their address. And I know lots of email addresses are used these days rather than house addresses, but you do still need to know where you live. So we talk about addresses and where we live, the county, the country. Okay. Addresses differ in different parts of the world, which is always an amazing fact to children. They think that because their address is written in a particular way, that's how everybody in the entire world does it, which isn't true. So again, you can broaden out your learning with them. You can write letters, which is always quite nice. And there are lots of books out there where you can learn about different places. That one's about Hong Kong. This Katie goes to London. She goes to a lot of places. But again, you can talk about the fact that it's London, it's got the capital L and the place to go to, and they're learning about the world at the same time that we are learning about grammar. So after that, from proper nouns, again, the little step, we go to what we call common nouns. Now, common nouns are still name words, the names of people, places and things, but they are not particular individual one-off. So it's a duck. Duck is a noun word, okay, but it's not a particular duck, it's just a duck. It's the name of that particular bird, frog, okay? And we say to them, again, a very simplified definition because it works for concrete nouns. If you can take a picture of it, it is probably a noun. So we get them either have little card squares with a circle cut out and laminated, so they think they're looking through a camera. If you're a very rich school, you can actually use a digital camera, but they sort of look round. And again, good way of developing vocabulary. You can get lots of pictures for whatever it might be, animals, if that's what you're working on, rooms in a house, all this sort of thing. Okay. And again, if you make books up like that and have them in the classroom, then they can sit and go through them and read them and say the words to themselves or to their friend as they go. So again, you're practicing, but without doing it in a fun way, basically. You're practicing in a fun way. So as I say, they're normally names of people, places, or things. So again, you can get them to sort words into those categories to help understanding and comprehension. And again, when we're doing it, we can put it into sentence structures, again, particularly if it's a foreign language. There is a cat. I can see a cat. Is there a cat? Okay, we can put whichever, as I say, vocabulary we're working on and put it into a sentence structure we're working on, and then help them to understand that and to be able to both speak it and write it. So little things, because I say comprehension is very important. Doesn't matter whether it's a foreign language or not. So we have little things like this: the cat is sleeping, and you've got the one answer, yes, but you can encourage them. I say it's just a very simple picture. The cat is sleeping, and they could just say yes, but you want to encourage them to speak. So you will encourage them to speak in a sentence. Yes, the cat is sleeping. Okay. Is it a black cat? No, it's not a black cat. Or no, it's actually a ginger cat. We always call orange cats ginger in this country. I can see a dog. No, I can't see a dog. I can see a cat. So from this one very simple picture, with quite honestly a lot in it, you can get an awful lot of vocabulary, bringing in the things that you are working on and we are working on. I have just 2 plastic cups with yes and no on, okay, and we have a whole set of words, little sentences. Frogs can swim, they have to decide yes or no. Trees can run, yes or no. They take the little slip of paper and they put it in the cup. You can then go back afterwards and check whether they've got them right or wrong in their understanding. Again, they can do it with a friend. You can set up a whole, batch of these, pre-print them. Again, in your classroom, they can be used when the children have got a few minutes to go. And Sue on her website, TCRW, Teaching Children to Read and Write, has got a whole load that can be downloaded and printed for free. So again, nice things to keep children occupied that are good, don't involve you in too much work. So then we explain to them that nouns can be singular or can be plural, so they can come as more than one. And the most common way of making a plural in English is to add an S at the end of the word, as you can see at the bottom: the pig and pigs, car and cars, ant and ants. We also teach them in the first year that if the word ended with ch, sh, s, or fox, which is still a sound because that X is an X, that sound still comes on the end, then actually it's not an S, but it's an ES that they need to add. So again, they've got a rule. They don't need to decide or stick a pin in, as we say. They know if it ends with a ch, a sh, or a s, the X, then it needs an ES to make a plural, not an S. Okay. These pull-out plurals are in the back of the handbook. You can photocopy them. And again, it's just a fun way for children to practice. So ladybird, 1 ladybird, 3 ladybirds, and they emphasize that on the end so that they remember to put it there. And again, you can have little cards. I find the cards are quite good, particularly again, if it's not their first language, then it can remind them of the word you're working on. But if not, invariably they will suggest a word that isn't a regular plural ending. So this just keeps them on the right track if you're doing that. And again, once you've made a set of cards up, you've got them in the classroom, you can have them there for the children to use. Again, crossover with grammar and spelling, as we've said before, it's a whole holistic process. If you want to make a plural for a word ending in Y, we talked about I being shy and not liking coming at the end of a word. So cousin Tuffy Y takes its place. But when we add that S, it's no longer at the end. So it comes back. So again, it's the same rule that we've taught. It's just being reinforced, and we're showing how it applies in this particular situation. Okay, then we move on to adjectives, because of course, adjectives describe nouns. The colour for adjectives is blue, and the action is that we put the fist on the side of our head. So we've got a proper noun, a common noun, an adjective. It's all on our head. And again, you can call them out, and you can see the children who know what they're doing, and you can see the children who need a bit more help. So we tell them adjectives describe nouns. In this case, it's snakes, because that's one of our characters. So they can be spotty, they can be shiny, they can be stripy. Numbers are adjectives, colours are adjectives. So we go over and talk about adjectives with the children. This comes from the big book. I love these pictures, and however many times I see them, I still notice something new and different in them every time I see them. In the back of the handbook, you've got some templates, again, that you can make bits of snake. These are just bits of wrapping paper. And then the children can make up a snake, and they have to say to you, a red, stripy, starry snake, or a flowery, shiny blue snake. And again, once you've made these up, you've got the box in your classroom, the children can just do it between themselves, talking, reinforcing the words, reinforcing how you make that little phrase up, the noun phrase about the snake, being whatever colour it might be. Or you can have words, and again, then they have to colour the snake in the particular adjective that you've given them in the word. So I say ways of doing things and practicing things. And again, it applies to other things. So again, you know, Elm and the Elephant books, lots of adjectives in that because of colours. And the fish on the left-hand side are from a book called Patchwork. And again, it doesn't matter whether they're snakes or elephants or fish or anything else. This is one of the worksheets from the handbook. So once they've learnt, you know, what an adjective is, and some of them are, they apply them to a noun. So a red apple, a striped shirt, a green tree, etc. Okay, and then again, we can take it further out. And they've described, the young man on the left has described himself. I like the naughty one, which is just hidden at the bottom, but he's not all fantastic. He has got a naughty streak. And the one on the right-hand side is gingerbread man. So there's sort of lots of adjectives that might describe or be in the story of the gingerbread man. And we've put them in a gingerbread shape. And then, of course, they have to tell or retell and then write the story of the gingerbread man, hopefully using some of these adjectives and things that they have learned and we've been talking about, which will hopefully make their speaking and their writing much better, because they're not only more aware of what words there are, but they know a lot more of them. So we've got a scary, huge, green and hairy monster, and we can start moving into storytelling. Why is it scary? Where does it live? What does it do? Who does it scare? Right? Does it have any friends? So again, just one very simple thing, but get as much vocabulary, get as much talking, and then transfer that to the writing as you possibly can. And this is in Grammar 2. This is a sheet about an alien. You have to fold it over and then write an adjective in, and then they have to draw the alien to match the adjectives. But again, it's just a bit of fun, but it helps the children remember, and it means they can practice doing these things, as I say, because we want them to learn, we want it to stick. Verbs, which are doing or action words, the colour is red, and the action is like pretending to run. And we normally have bees. In England, we say bees are always busy doing things. They're great workers. So our verbs are often have a bee theme to illustrate them. And in the beehive there, you can see it says to read, to play, to sit, to sleep. So we have the infinitive, which is the basic form of the verb. Again, I've been told to people, oh, I knew this was a good scheme because it didn't start with a continuous. We start with the basics and we add all that knowledge onto it. So the basic part of the verb is the infinitive, the to sleep, to cook, whatever it might be. So again, lots of vocabulary there, lots of things that we can talk about. A little game we play, a bit like Simon Says, where if Simon says it, you have to do it. But if you just say the action, then you don't, and you're supposed to be out. It's a party game that children play. So we've transferred that to Inky Says. So Inky says run, and they pretend to run. Inky says hop, and they pretend to hop. Sing, and they shouldn't be doing anything because Inky didn't say it. But again, you can choose the verbs you're working on, the vocabulary you're working on, and it's a game that you can play with them, which reinforces vocabulary, and they can play it between themselves as well. Again, if you've got a set of cards which got the right words on, it works even better. But say it's constantly revising things, because you can teach a child something once, but it doesn't mean they've learnt it. Okay, verbs happen in time, which is why we have tenses. Okay. To make a regular past tense, we add the suffix ed. And in fact, we went over that in the spelling side last time, that to add the ed, about dropping the e and things, if the suffix has got the vowel on the front of it. So we explained to them that that's how you make the past tense. But also, ed can make 3 different sounds when it comes as on the end of the word. It can be a t sound, like jumped. Okay, they hear a t on the end. They don't hear ed. It doesn't say jump head. Okay, it can say a d, like hugged. I hugged. There's a d on the end. Can't hear the air. Okay, it can both be there. So something like sprinted, they sprinted, you can hear the air and the dirt there. But again, we tell them, we explain that if it's the sprinted, they can hear it, that's fine. If it's the t or the d sound, okay, then even though they're hearing a t, they know, because it's a past tense, to write it, to spell it as the ed. Okay, so we're addressing the problems we know that they're going to find and that they're going to have, and telling them how to get over them. Being English, of course, not only do we have that problem, we also have irregular past tenses, or tricky past, we sometimes call them. These are because we have, again, incorporated 2 languages into English. A lot of these come from Anglo-Saxon, where apparently you used to change the verb to change the tense. So we've got, I ride my bike, I rode my bike. I drive my car, I drove my car. So we go over the past tenses and link them up so the children know which ones go together. And of course, as well as the present and the past, we have the future. Now, in order to make the future, we need what's called an auxiliary or helping verb, which is the verb to be. So we go over the verb to be in the past, the present, and the future. So I was, you were, he, she, it was, all that sort of thing. So again, we're teaching the information that you need to know, or that they need to know. Again, this page is in the big book and it's all there ready to show the children. For to be and for the future, for the first person singular and plural, so I and we, it could be shall, it could be will. We always have this conversation. In the past, technically and grammatically, shall was what you should use with I and we. But by usage, will is acceptable, and in fact, will is what you will hear most often. But we teach both because they need to know both. And as I say, technically, the shall is the one that used to be considered correct. But by usage, will is also acceptable, as I say, is what you will hear. But we've shown them both, so they know how to deal with both. If they come across the word shall, they're not going to be fooled by it. They're going to know what it is. So again, we can get them to look at sentences and say, right, find me the verb and underline it in red or color it in red if you're on a computer. So learn, and is that the past, present, or the future? And again, we have actions, past, present, we point to the floor, future, we go forward. So again, we get them thinking about the sentences that they're looking at and reading and saying. The race will start in the park. It's got that auxiliary verb, will start, so we know that's future. And again, you can say sentences, they can say sentences, and you can get them thinking about the tense they're in. She brushed her hair. It's got that ed, hasn't it? So we know that's in the past. So again, they're starting to analyze the sentences and to the language. And again, you can do the same thing, cups and little sentences, and get them to look at them and put the ticket in the right one. And again, you can then go back and check that they've got it right. They can do it individually, they can do it in pairs, they can do it in a group. Okay, because we like to keep them busy and doing things that have got a point to them. Over the course of the grammar program, we actually teach sort of 9 parts. So we teach them the simple, the continuous, and the perfect tenses, how to make them, how to use them. Okay, I'm not going over them all today because we've only got the time that we've got, but we have them in this what we call our tense tent, because actually it gives the children a visual. It gives them that grid that they can start pinning those bits of the verb on, and it helps them to think about it like that, rather than just having words or tenses swimming around in their head in the air. And they get, quite good at changing the tense and moving it about. And as I say, if they can think about that and they can see that little tense tent, then they are more likely to be getting it right. We teach pronouns which take the place of nouns. So instead of saying Peter went to the shops, Peter picked up some apples, Peter went out again, Peter walked home. Okay, we say he. We replace, having established that Peter is who we're talking about. After that, we only need to say he. The colour for pronouns is pink, and we have I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they. And again, we have actions to go with it. So I, they point to themselves. You, they point to one other person because it's singular. He, obviously, they point to a boy. She to a girl. It, we normally point to the floor. And they're the singular pronouns. Then we move on to the plural pronouns. And again, the first person plural, we, you start at yourself because it's linked to the I, and you take in everybody else and yourself. Okay. You, because it's the same as the one you've already done. What have we got? 2 there? Okay. So one is one you, and the other one is you as in all of you. So that's a plural. Okay. But again, by putting it like this, it's easier to explain to the children that that's what you're meaning. And they, we normally point to the classroom next door because it's them, it's somebody else, it's they. Okay. So we do the plurals. And once they learn plurals, the pronouns, once they've learned the pronouns like that, we can link verbs onto them. So we can conjugate verbs. I look, you look, he, she, it. Oh, look. Oh, that's got an S on the end. Why? Okay. So we explain to the children that the he, she, it part of the verb, it needs an S on the end. So again, they know to put that there when they're speaking or when they are writing. And again, we can go over lots of different verbs. I dance, you dance, he, she, it dances. We dance, you dance, they dance. Or we can do it in the past. I danced, you danced, he, she, it danced, and so on. But again, it helps the children to give a framework in which to learn and understand. Right. Just as adjectives describe nouns, adverbs describe verbs. They always find this one easier to remember because obviously it's got the word verb in it. The colour is orange, and the action for a verb is running, and then the adverb, we take the fists and we just bang one on top of the other. So the plane flies noisily or slowly or quickly. A lot of adjectives end in ly, not all of them though. Okay, so fast is an adverb, but it doesn't end in ly. And again, this is a picture from the big book, and there's lots of things going on. Inky and Bea are having a picnic down in the corner there, and they're eating very messily. The band is playing tunefully. Okay, so lots of examples on the book for you to look at. And again, we have a little game that we often play. Again, I will often have cards with adverbs on and with verbs on. And again, the children, someone comes out to the front and they get an adverb, which they're not allowed to show or tell anybody. And then the children in the rest of the class have to say a verb, so eat. So the person has to do that verb in that manner. So they eat loudly, so you have to go. Or if you shout, ah! They shout loudly, okay? And they have to guess what the adverb is because they don't know it. And again, if you've got cards with the words you're working on and the adverbs you're working on, it makes it much easier for them. And again, it gives lots of practice without the children knowing they're practicing because they think they're playing a game. There we go. Right. We also do something called expand a sentence because we're not just teaching them because we want them to know what a noun is. You know, we're not just teaching them because we want them to know what an adverb is and the colour's orange and the action is this. We are teaching them because we want them to use it. We want it to increase their knowledge and their vocabulary and their command of English. So we say, right, how can we expand a sentence? We've got a very boring little sentence here. The dog barked. Right, let's have an adjective. The what dog barked? The little dog, the black dog, the fierce dog. I don't know. Okay. We'll add another adjective because actually we can add more than one. And how did it bark? Let's add an adverb now. So what we end up with, we explain that the sentence we end up with is going to be a lot more interesting because it contains a lot more detail. So from the dog barked, which is a perfectly good but perfectly boring sentence, we get the small fluffy dog barked excitedly at the two children as they ran into the garden. Because we've also extended that sentence. And again, we're using it for them to get them confident in talking and to get them to write and make stories up. So question words are good for stories. We go over question words. Who, why, what, which, when, where. So who did the dog bark at? Where is the garden? When is it? Morning, evening, night, spring, summer. Why was the dog excited? Why did the children run in? Again, you set up opportunities to talk with the children or with each other to develop stories and language and writing. Okay, which children are they? Have they got names? So again, we are teaching the grammar for a reason. I love this quote, and it's so true, especially for me. A synonym is a word you use when you can't spell the other one or the one that you really want to. And that happens to me a lot. Used to. I'm much better now. But I love that quote. Okay. So we talk about better words. We talk about words you can use instead of other words, because again, it makes language more interesting and it develops vocabulary. And if as a teacher you've got a story and it's da 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 said Jane, da 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 said Samita, da 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 said Javed, da 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 said Jill, it's very boring. Okay, so we explain that sometimes, you know, it's better to use other words, and words have similar, not necessarily always the same, but similar meanings. And we have what we call our word webs, and they fill in or think about or learn as many words as they can think of. That means something similar or could be used instead of that particular word. And again, that gives them the chance to look at them. You can display them up in the classroom. And you can look at what influence that will have on the sentence. I'm going out, said Inky. Again, fine, perfectly good sentence. I'm going out, whispered Inky. Okay, whole different feeling to the sentence. And if you're in a story, that might be more appropriate. Okay, I'm going out, hissed Inky. It's obviously not very, very happy. I'm going out, shouted Inky. And again, they can say the sentences with a particular manner of saying it, which again helps them when they're reading to give the right cadences and expression to what they're reading, but to encourage their vocabulary and to encourage them to use different words when they're writing as well. And we've got quite a few pages and examples and suggestions of words that you can use in order, as I say, to extend their vocabulary and such things. We teach prepositions, which is green. Now, prepositions tell you the relationship of one noun to another. So we tend to point to the floor and to a wall for the action. It's green. So we've got a list of prepositions down that left-hand side, and we talk about Inky's journey. So it's words like along the road or past the fence or under the tree. Those are preposition words. Towards, through. Again, lots of examples in the book. And if you read the teacher's notes side, that will help you and explain things as well. So through the gate, under the bridge, across the road, along the path. The words in bold are prepositions. And we can say to the children that it's not a sentence because it doesn't begin with a capital letter and end with a full stop, but it does make sense. It's got a preposition at the front, so we call it a phrase, a prepositional phrase. So again, we keep developing the children's knowledge of these things. A phrase doesn't have a verb. A sentence, when we learn about verbs, we tell them, we add to that definition and say that a sentence also has to have a verb as well as the other things. If it makes sense but it doesn't have a verb, then it's a phrase. But again, all this is in the teacher's notes side. If you read it thoroughly, you're fine. Don't panic. And again, I often have pictures I've got from books or from magazines or comics, and a set of prepositions that we're working on. And I ask the children to make me either some prepositional phrases or some sentences or a story using the prepositions and looking at the picture. Okay, so again, it's a way of spreading, broadening the knowledge that you're teaching them. And things like Rosie's Walks, that's a lovely book, lots of prepositions that you could use in there. And again, getting the children to talk and to speak it first before writing it. Conjunctions, adjoining words, are purple, so obvious action joining together. And we have our patchwork quilt, because obviously a patchwork quilt is bits of things joined together. So we have joining words. He listened to music, and then there's another half of the sentence on the other side. They have to choose what it is and put the right joining word in. It was raining, so we stayed inside. She went to the library because she had to return her books. So again, we learn conjunctions and what they are. And one of the reasons that we have the colours for the different parts of speech is so that we can what we call parse a sentence. I'd never heard that phrase till I came to this. But it basically just means identify the job the words are doing in the sentence. All we're doing all the time is trying to make the children aware of words in the sentences and how they're working and what they're doing. So by using the different colours, they can parse a sentence. They can underline them or highlight them. It doesn't matter. You can just start with one. Okay, if you're doing adjectives, you can just highlight adjectives in blue. You don't need to do the whole sentence to start with. You know, when we were doing the verbs, we just highlighted the verb. But eventually, they should be able to do a whole sentence and to identify the different parts of speech within it. And again, it's just making them think. It's just making them analyse sentences, which if they go on to study English as they get older, will be very useful. And we will see in the next training where that leads to, because this works for simple sentences, but the more complex the sentence get, then it's not just a question of knowing, is it a noun, is it a verb, is it an adjective? Now, particularly for their writing, they need to be able to understand and to know and to use punctuation marks. So we start off speech marks with speech bubbles, which children often see in comics, and they understand that that bubble contains the speech that person or thing or animal in this case is actually saying. And we then explain that it's the words in that speech bubble that go inside the 66 and the 99, the speech marks. And a friend of mine, I know, she draws the speech bubble on the board, writes the words in it, and then rubs out the bits around it, so it just leaves like the 66 and the 99, the little marks there, to show that that's what it is. But we start off and we say these are the bits that go inside the speech marks. Again, this is actually from Jolly Classroom, a picture from Jolly Classroom. But again, it's a way of encouraging children to say, what do you think the mouse is saying? What do you think the cat is saying? Oh, it's raining. I don't like rain. Again, putting themselves into the character and thinking about what they're actually saying. Ladybird is rowing hard across the lake there. And then we teach them, how to write that, how to put that punctuation into a sentence. And if you can see at the top there, where it says the fireworks, a brilliant said Bill, there are boxes. And each of those boxes should have some form of punctuation mark in it, a full stop, a full stop, an exclamation mark, a speech mark, whatever it might be. Okay, so they then start learning how to use the punctuation within written speech. In Grammar 1, we do commas in lists. So I went to the zoo and I saw lions, goats, giraffes, and penguins. So the first ones need a comma, but that last word is joined with that conjunction and. At the fruit stall, they had apples, grapes, bananas, and pears. So again, we talk it, we speak it before we expect to see it in writing. And again, you can do it with actions. I went to the zoo and I saw lions, goats, penguins, and giraffes. But again, doing it physically, you're more likely to then get it to come out into their written work. We look at the apostrophe S for belonging. So this is a lost property office. The young man at the front, we're calling Ben. It's Ben's drum that he's lost. Jill's dog. So we've got that S added with the apostrophe to show it belongs to them. And we talk about where they should go and where they shouldn't go, because in English, well, certainly in England, there's an awful lot of apostrophes that are added into words that don't need them. But if you teach the correct way right from the beginning, you are less likely to get them to make mistakes. It's like the word it's. It only has the apostrophe if it's short for it is, the verb it is. It is raining today. It's raining today. You need the apostrophe. If it's its bowl, it doesn't. It's a quite simple rule, but most people don't know it, and which is why we get apostrophes sprinkled about the place. But as I say, within the books, all these things are explained simply and straightforwardly, and one little step at a time, going over what they have learnt, and then building the next bit onto it. And as I say, the reason that we're doing this, like I say, is not because we want them to be able to say a noun is a name word, or an adjective describes a noun, whatever it is. It is because we want to see it come out in their writing. So this is a young man after a year of Jolly Phonics and 1 year of Jolly Grammar. And you can see he's retelling a story. We've got some nice sentences, we've got capital letters, we've got speech marks coming in there. But, this is what we are aiming towards in terms of writing. I mean, as I say, lots of speaking, because I always find it's much easier, or it comes out much better in their writing if they understand it, if they're speaking it, if they're saying the sentence, if they're commanding the language. But so we want all of it. We want them to speak, to write, and to spell, and all of it comes together and builds up to to become a whole bank of knowledge that the children use. Now, that is my presentation for the moment, and I couldn't see the chat box, so I will have a look and see if there's any in there, or if there are any other questions that have come up since. If you find the word web difficult, just simplify it. If you want to still keep the spider, you could have a picture of a spider and then just have 2 or 3 words hanging down from the spider. It doesn't have to be a web, okay? Or write them inside the spider. Just simplify it down, or get 2 or 3 words that mean similar things, and get them to sort them out and say, well, these all mean sentence. As I said, if you can put them into the sentence and get them to use the different words and understand what difference they make to the sentence, that often helps. But just cut it down. If you only want 3 or 4 or 5 spaces or words, just do that number. It's whatever is appropriate to your children, because obviously you are the expert in the children you're teaching, because you're standing there in front of them, you are teaching them, you know them, and a scheme should adapt and be useful to you, not make the children adapt and fit into the straitjacket of the scheme. Okay, some of them will have very good English. Some of them may not hear very much English at all, in which case you probably have to go slower, and you have to do an awful lot more vocabulary and comprehension introduction within it. It does work even in those cases. My friend Marge teaches in a place called Bradford in the north of England. She has classes of 30, and they can have up to 10 different languages in that class, none of which is English. They go home and they don't hear English around them either, because they live within a community that lives whatever their native language, whichever their mother tongue is, Urdu, Hindi, whatever. But when they come to school, they are speaking English in the class. They've got English instructions going on, and actually English is their common language. But it does mean there is, as I say, a lot of extra vocabulary and comprehension that has to go into it. But you have to do that anyway. But we're giving a framework, an idea of how this language works and hangs together, and to use the things that you learn. Age group, well, we use it, our children in year 1, which they are children who are 6, basically. Some of them will be 6 already, some of them will become 6 within that year. So it's very simple, it's very straightforward, and it builds up very slowly. We've done it in an hour. We've done 2 years in an hour, which is a huge amount of information to throw at you. But as I say, if you read the teacher's notes side, it is explained much more carefully, slowly, and fully on there. And then we take our children up, obviously, a year at a time. But again, it will depend on your circumstances and how much English your children have. It may be that you need to take 2 years if you're not having them 5 days a week. If they're not hearing a lot of English around them, they are not going to move as fast as children living in somewhere where they hear English, or where English is their mother tongue and their parents speak it. But that's just common sense. But take it at the speed that you need to. You normally find it can work at quite a pace. Children are very they always amaze me in how much they can actually learn and what they do actually learn. But as I say, you are the experts in your children, and you will know what rate and how you need to move them on.
Thank you, Sarah. The session was really enlightening. So if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat box.
But basically, I would say read the books, read the teacher's notes, read the instructions. This is an overview, but that will take you through literally lesson by lesson.
So Thank you all. Thank you, Sarah. See you all tomorrow for the progression of grammar grade 3, 4, and 5.